Wyoming, 1876. The scout who saw the forbidden rite. Aiyana's cursed secret awoke the West. The sun hung low over the vast plains of Wyoming, its golden light spilling over rolling hills and scattered groves of cottonwood trees. The air was crisp with the scent of grass and earth, carrying with it a sense of untamed freedom that could only exist in a place untouched by towns and roads. Eli Thorne rode steadily on his horse, a lean, dark-coated mare named Bramble, feeling the wind brush against his face. He had traveled for days from the nearest settlement, a small, dusty town where rumors of dangers and hidden treasures mingled with the chatter of traders and farmers. But Eli was not here for gossip or gold. He was a scout, one of the few who had the skills and courage to guide people through the wild, dangerous lands of the West. And this time, he was leading a group of settlers who dreamed of building new lives in a territory that still felt raw, unclaimed, and alive. Eli's life had always been tied to the land. From his earliest years, he had wandered through forests and valleys, learning the language of the wind, the footprints of animals, and the whispers of rivers. To him, the plains were not just wide stretches of dirt and grass. They were living entities, full of stories, secrets, and quiet warnings. Even now, as he looked over the horizon, he could feel the pulse of the land, strong and steady. But there was something unusual about this place, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. It was more than the usual solitude or the occasional wild animals. There was a sense that the land itself was watching, waiting, almost holding its breath. The settlers were not aware of it. They moved in small groups, carrying their belongings in wagons and on pack animals. Their conversations light and hopeful. They spoke of the future, of homesteads and gardens, of towns rising where none had stood before. They laughed at stories of bears or rattlesnakes, thinking danger was something far off, a tale to thrill children by the fire. Eli, however, knew better. He had seen the marks of hidden threats, tracks that did not belong to any known animal, strange arrangements of stones and sticks, signs that humans had passed through but had left no clear trail. And he had heard the whispers too. Settlers spoke of a young woman named Aiyana, who lived on the edge of the tribe's land and carried a reputation for secrecy. Some said she was wise beyond her years. Others said she was touched by spirits that no one could see. Eli did not know what to believe yet, but curiosity stirred within him, sharper than the morning chill. As the party pressed onward, Eli guided them through a narrow canyon where the walls rose like silent guards. The sun dipped lower, casting shadows that moved like living creatures along the rock. Bramble's hooves clicked against the hard soil, and the sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet. Eli's eyes scanned every detail. A broken branch here, a footprint there, the sudden call of a distant bird that seemed out of place. He had learned to read these signs, to sense when the ordinary was disrupted by something unusual. And tonight, the land was speaking to him in ways he could not yet understand. When the group stopped to make camp near a small stream, Eli dismounted and began checking the area. He inspected the water, sniffed the air, and looked around for any signs of danger. The settlers were busy setting up tents, gathering firewood, and preparing a simple meal over a crackling fire. Their faces glowed with the warmth of the flames, and for a moment, Eli allowed himself to relax, watching the children play with sticks and stones while their parents spoke of farms and fences. But even in this peaceful moment, Eli's attention never wavered. He noticed footprints near the edge of the trees, too delicate in pattern to belong to an ordinary animal. He crouched to examine them, tracing the shapes with his finger. They led toward the forest but disappeared quickly, as if whoever, or whatever, had passed that way had vanished into the shadows. It was then that Eli saw her, a young woman, moving with a quiet grace that seemed to belong more to the wind than to the earth, emerged from the edge of the trees. Her hair was dark, almost black, and fell in long waves over her shoulders. Her eyes were deep and thoughtful, holding a knowledge that seemed far older than her years. This was Aiyana. Eli had heard stories of her, but nothing could have prepared him for her presence. She did not speak immediately, only watched him and the settlers with calm curiosity. Her gaze was steady, and Eli felt strangely that she could see him not just with her eyes, but with her mind, reading the thoughts he tried to keep hidden. The settlers grew uneasy, whispering to one another. They had heard tales of strange women in the woods, rumored to hold powers beyond understanding. But Eli motioned for calm. He stepped forward, hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Evening," he said. "I'm Ellie Thorne. I guide these people through the land." "Who are you?" Aiyana's voice was soft but firm, carrying over the crackle of the fire.
"I am Aiyana. I live here with my people. You should be careful."
"This land holds secrets you do not yet understand." There was no threat in her tone, only warning. She gestured toward the trees, where shadows moved and twisted like living things. Some things are not meant to be seen by those who do not belong.
Eli nodded, understanding her meaning even without knowing the details.
He had spent years in the wild and had learned to respect both nature and the old ways of the people who lived in harmony with it. He did not press further but allowed curiosity to grow like a quiet ember inside him. "We mean no harm," he said. "We are travelers, seeking only to make our homes here." "But if there is something I should know to keep them safe, I will listen." Aiyana studied him for a long moment, her eyes flicking toward the settlers who had stopped their work to watch the exchange. Then, with a subtle nod, she turned and walked a few steps toward the forest, motioning for Eli to follow if he wished. He hesitated, thinking of the camp behind him, then realized that this moment was rare, a chance to understand something few outsiders ever saw. He followed, careful not to alarm the settlers, moving silently across the soft soil and through the scattered underbrush. They walked together in silence, the sounds of the night growing around them, the call of distant coyotes, the rustle of leaves in the gentle wind, the steady murmur of the stream nearby. Aiyana led him to a small clearing surrounded by ancient trees. The ground was marked with symbols carved into the stones, faint but deliberate, almost as if they were instructions written long ago. Eli knelt to examine them, recognizing that they were not random. They carried meaning, a message that had been preserved for generations. "This place is old," Aiyana said softly. "It holds the rights of my people, rights that are not meant for everyone to witness. They protect the land, keep balance, and guard against things that should not be disturbed. You have crossed a threshold, Eli Thorne. Even seeing this much changes you, whether you know it or not." Eli straightened, looking at her in surprise. He had guided settlers and travelers through countless dangers. But this felt different. There was weight in her words, a gravity that went beyond any storm or animal he had faced. He realized that Wyoming was not just wide-open plains and hidden valleys. It was alive in ways he had never imagined. And now, by meeting Aiyana and following her into the sacred place, he had stepped into a story older than the towns, older than the settlers, older than the West itself. For hours they spoke quietly, exchanging knowledge of the land and its hidden signs. Aiyana shared hints of her people's customs, careful not to reveal the full depth of the forbidden rites. Eli listened, learning not only about survival, but about respect, patience, and the importance of understanding the unseen. The night deepened, stars stretching across the sky like diamonds scattered over black velvet. For the first time in years, Eli felt that he was not merely passing through the land as a guide or scout. He felt part of something larger, a tapestry of stories, lives, and secrets that belonged to the land itself. By the time they returned to the camp, Eli carried a new sense of purpose. He knew the settlers would never understand the subtle messages of the land, the delicate balance between humans and the forces that protected it. But he also knew that he had begun a journey that could change him forever. And as he watched Aiyana disappear into the shadows of her forest, he understood that the West was more than a place to be tamed. It was a living, breathing story, and he had been given the first chapter. The fire flickered, casting shadows over the settlers' faces, and for a moment, Eli allowed himself a quiet smile. The adventure had begun, and though he did not yet know what challenges awaited, he felt ready. The plains stretched endlessly before him, filled with secrets, danger, and beauty. And somewhere out there, Aiyana held her people's ancient knowledge, waiting for the day it would be fully revealed. Eli Thorne had seen the first glimpse, and the land had already begun to whisper his name. Eli could not sleep that night. The camp was quiet, with only the soft sounds of the stream and the occasional whisper of the wind in the trees. But his mind was alive with thoughts of Aiyana, the symbols in the clearing, and the sense of something unseen that seemed to move through the land. He had always trusted his instincts, and they were telling him that the West held more than just open plains and hidden valleys. It held secrets, ancient and powerful, that could not be ignored. Before sunrise, Ellie rose and saddled Bramble, the horse sensing his restlessness and nudging him gently. The settlers were still asleep, unaware of the scout's plan. Eli had decided to follow Aiyana at a safe distance. He did not intend to intrude, but he needed to understand what he had witnessed. There was something about the clearing, the stones, and the carvings that tugged at him, a quiet urgency he could not resist. The forest was cool and fragrant in the early morning light. Birds called to one another from high branches, and small animals scurried in the underbrush. Eli moved carefully, mindful of his footing, trying not to disturb anything that might alert Aiyana. He had learned the value of patience in the wild. Sometimes, waiting quietly revealed more than hasty action ever could. After some time, he noticed a faint trail, marked by small arrangements of stones and sticks, almost like a secret path. Following it, he came to a small grove, its center shaded by ancient trees, whose trunks were wide and twisted with age.
Aiyana was there, standing near a circle of stones.
She seemed to sense him before he arrived, glancing over her shoulder with calm awareness. In the center of the circle were several other figures, elders from her tribe. Their presence gave the place a solemn feeling, and Eli realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. They were performing a ceremony, moving slowly and deliberately, their actions quiet but precise. Eli did not understand all of the gestures, but he could see the care and reverence in every movement. The elders chanted softly, their voices blending with the rustling leaves and the distant murmur of the stream. Aiyana moved among them, carrying what appeared to be a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Every step she took was measured, respectful, and full of meaning. Eli watched, mesmerized. He had seen many rituals in his life, but nothing like this. This was not a performance for outsiders. It was a sacred act, one that had been performed for generations to protect the land and the people who lived upon it. As Eli observed, a strange sensation settled over him. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy he could not explain. It was not frightening, but it demanded attention. His heart beat steadily, yet he could feel the presence of something beyond the ordinary, something tied to the very earth beneath his feet. He realized with a mixture of awe and concern that by witnessing the ceremony he had crossed into a part of the world that was normally hidden from outsiders. Suddenly Aiyana looked directly at him. He froze, unsure if she had noticed him. Her gaze was steady, not angry or fearful, but filled with understanding. It was as if she knew that he had come to learn, not to disrupt. She nodded ever so slightly, acknowledging his presence without breaking the ceremony. Eli lowered himself to the ground, making himself small and unobtrusive, determined to observe without interfering. The ceremony continued, with the elders moving through a series of precise gestures, their chants rising and falling like the rhythm of a heartbeat. The bundle in Aiyana's hands was placed carefully on the ground, and she began to move in a slow, circular pattern around it. Her movements graceful and intentional. The air seemed to hum with energy, and Ellie could feel a subtle vibration beneath his feet. He realized that this was more than tradition. It was a form of protection, a way to maintain balance in a land that could be fragile and unpredictable. Hours passed as Eli watched, mesmerized by the dedication and care of Aiyana and the elders. He began to notice patterns in the stones and the carvings, symbols that seemed to connect the ritual to the land itself. Streams, trees, and hills all had a role in the ceremony, as if the land were a living participant rather than a backdrop. Eli understood then that the ceremony was not only spiritual but practical. It preserved harmony between humans and the forces of nature, ensuring that neither could dominate the other completely. Yet, despite the beauty and precision of the rite, Eli felt a subtle tension in the air. It was as though the ceremony carried a warning, a message that some things were not meant to be observed casually. The elders moved with care, and Aiyana's eyes occasionally flicked toward him, reminding him that he was an outsider. By watching, he had broken a rule, however unintentionally, and the consequences were unknown. Eli did not feel fear, but he felt a deep sense of responsibility. He realized that understanding the land and its people required respect, patience, and humility, and that he had stepped into a story far larger than his own. After the ceremony ended, the elders dispersed, leaving Aiyana to tend to the remaining arrangements in the circle. She worked quickly but with the same care and reverence, packing away the stones and smoothing the earth. When she finally turned toward Eli, he could see a mix of caution and curiosity in her eyes. "You have seen what is not meant for outsiders," she said softly. "It is a heavy thing, and it carries consequences. The land itself has noticed you, and you must tread carefully. The balance is fragile." Eli nodded, understanding that her words were not a warning in anger, but a reminder of the weight of what he had witnessed. "I mean no harm," he replied. "I only want to understand, to protect those I guide through this land." Aiyana studied him, her gaze searching his face as if assessing his intentions. Finally she spoke again, her voice calm and measured. "Then you must learn to listen to the land, not just see it. It speaks in ways that many cannot hear. Some things you may never fully understand, but respect and patience will guide you further than knowledge alone." As the sun climbed higher, Eli realized that he had entered a world that was hidden from most eyes. The West was not just open plains and distant mountains. It was a living, breathing place full of history, mystery, and rules older than any town or settlement. By witnessing the ceremony, he had become part of that story, whether he wanted to or not. And though he did not yet know the full consequences, he felt a connection to Aiyana and her people, a bond formed through respect, observation, and shared understanding. He returned to the settlers' camp with a quiet sense of awe and responsibility. The settlers were busy with their chores, moving wagons and tending to animals, unaware of the ritual he had witnessed. Eli did not speak of it, knowing that some knowledge was too fragile to share casually. Instead, he focused on guiding the group safely through the territory, all the while feeling the subtle pull of the ceremony on his mind. The land seemed different now, alive in a new way, responding to his presence and reminding him of the power of unseen forces. Over the following days, Eli noticed small changes in the environment. Trails that had seemed clear before now appeared altered. Animals acted unpredictably, sometimes moving in ways that suggested awareness of more than just instinct. The wind carried hints of whispers that he could not fully understand. And even the stars seemed brighter at night, casting unusual patterns across the sky. He realized that by witnessing the forbidden rite, he had awakened something subtle but undeniable in the land. It was not dangerous in the ordinary sense, but it was a force that demanded respect and careful attention. Eli sought Aiyana again, hoping to learn more without disrupting her people. He found her at the edge of the forest, tending to a small garden near her home. She looked at him with calm understanding, acknowledging his presence without surprise. "You have seen more than most outsiders ever will," she said. "The Rite is older than any town, older than settlers, older than the West itself. It watches, it protects, and it remembers. You have crossed a line, but your respect gives you a chance to walk back safely." Eli nodded, realizing the truth in her words. The West was more than a place to explore or settle. It was alive, full of hidden forces and ancient knowledge, and he had glimpsed a part of that hidden world. From that moment on, he understood that his role was not only to guide settlers, but also to honor the land and the traditions that had preserved it for centuries. The journey ahead would be full of challenges, but it would also be a chance to witness the extraordinary, to bridge worlds, and to carry forward lessons that could change lives forever. And so, as the sun set over the vast plains once again, Eli Thorne felt a sense of purpose, unlike any he had known before. The West was no longer just a place to traverse. It was a story, a living history, and he had become part of its unfolding tale. Aiyana had shown him the first glimpse of a mystery that would shape not only his path but the lives of those he guided. The forbidden rite had been revealed to him, and with it came knowledge, responsibility, and the quiet awakening of a secret that had waited for generations to be seen. Days passed after Eli had witnessed the forbidden rite, and the world around him seemed subtly, but unmistakably, changed. The settlers carried on their routines, tending to their animals, setting up tents and planning their new homesteads. But Eli could feel a quiet tension in the land, a hum beneath the surface that had not been there before. It was as if the West itself had noticed him, and though he could not see it with the eye, he could sense the presence of something ancient and aware. At first, the changes were small. Trails he had walked countless times seemed to shift subtly, as if the paths remembered his steps but decided to rearrange themselves. The footprints of animals appeared in patterns that made no sense, leading to places that Eli had not seen before. Streams that usually ran clear and predictable now whispered differently, their currents forming shapes and patterns that hinted at messages Eli could barely interpret. Even the wind seemed more alive, brushing against his face in ways that carried faint murmurs, almost like whispers from the trees themselves. The settlers, of course, noticed nothing unusual. They laughed at their own missteps and blamed the wind or wildlife for the oddities in their surroundings. But Eli could not dismiss what he felt. He had grown attuned to the rhythms of the West, to the small signs and signals of nature, and this was different. This was not ordinary. The energy of the land had shifted since he had glimpsed the forbidden rite. He felt it in his bones, a quiet vibration that made him aware of unseen forces and reminded him that some knowledge carried weight far beyond comprehension. One evening, as the sun dipped behind distant hills, casting long shadows across the plains, Eli noticed a disturbance near the settlers' camp. A small group of deer, usually calm and predictable, had gathered at the edge of the forest, their ears twitching nervously. They moved in circles, never approaching the camp, yet never leaving entirely. It was a subtle, yet unmistakable sign. The natural order was unsettled. Eli approached slowly, careful not to alarm them, and watched as they finally darted into the trees in a flurry of motion. He could feel that something unseen had disturbed the balance, a ripple from the forbidden rite that now extended beyond the grove where he had witnessed it. The next morning, Eli met Aiyana at the edge of the forest. She had appeared silently, as if materializing from the trees themselves. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried a weight of knowledge that unsettled him. "The land has noticed," she said quietly. "By seeing the rite, you have awakened a force that sleeps beneath the soil and the wind. It is not evil, but it is restless, and it will test those who walk upon this land."
Eli nodded, understanding her meaning. He had always known that the West was wild, unpredictable, and alive in ways most people could not comprehend.
But now, the wildness seemed to possess a consciousness, a subtle intelligence that responded to his presence and his curiosity. "What must I do?" he asked.
"How can I guide these people safely?" Aiyana gestured toward the forest. "You must listen, not only with your ears but with your heart."
"The land speaks in whispers, in movements, in patterns. If you ignore it, the consequences could reach far beyond your camp. You must learn to move in harmony, not control. Respect will carry you further than any weapon or plan." Over the next few days, Eli observed subtle signs of the curse's awakening. One morning, he awoke to find footprints around the camp that did not belong to any animal he recognized. They moved in looping patterns, sometimes toward the stream, sometimes toward the hills, and then vanished into the soft earth. The settlers assumed the tracks were made by foxes or raccoons, but Eli knew better. The footprints had purpose, and intelligence behind them, as if the land itself were testing their presence. Animals behaved unusual as well. Birds circled overhead in unusual formations, calling in sequences that seemed almost like messages. Squirrels and rabbits appeared where they had never been, and once a fox stared directly at Eli for several long moments before retreating silently into the shadows. He began to understand that the land was responding to the awakening of the rite, and he had to respect its rhythms or risk upsetting it further. One afternoon, while exploring a ridge overlooking the camp, Eli noticed a strange pattern in the clouds. They formed shapes that mimicked the carvings he had seen in Aiyana's grove. Circles, lines, and curves that seemed deliberate. He felt a shiver of recognition, realizing that the land itself was communicating, using the elements to convey information. It was subtle, yet unmistakable. He knew that Aiyana's warning was not simply cautionary. It was guidance. Eli sought her out again, finding her near a stream where she was gathering herbs and observing the water. "The land moves," he said quietly. "I see signs everywhere now. Animals, clouds, tracks. It's as if everything is alive in a way I never noticed before."
Aiyana nodded. "It is alive."
"It is aware. The Rite was meant to keep the balance, but centuries of change have weakened the boundaries. By witnessing it, you have reminded the land of its purpose. It tests those who walk upon it, to see if they are ready to respect it. You must guide your people carefully, or they may unknowingly disrupt the balance further." Eli realized the gravity of her words. The settlers were unaware of the subtle forces at work, and their actions, however innocent, could upset the fragile harmony of the land. He took it upon himself to watch over them more carefully, ensuring they did not unknowingly provoke the restless energy awakened by the Rite. Every step, every movement, became part of a delicate dance between human intention and natural order. As the days continued, small incidents reminded him that the land's awareness was growing. Once, while leading a group to gather firewood, he found a circle of stones arranged precisely in a pattern he had seen in the grove. No one had placed them there. The stones had moved naturally or by some unseen guidance. Another time, a sudden gust of wind scattered tools and belongings in the camp, as if reminding the settlers that the land's power could not be ignored. Through it all, Aiyana remained a steady presence. She taught Eli to observe without interfering, to interpret signs without fear, and to respect the boundaries that the land demanded. She explained that the force awakened by the Rite was not a curse in the ordinary sense, but a test. It sought to ensure that those who walked the West with curiosity and ambition also carried humility, patience, and respect. Those who failed the test would find their journey more difficult, while those who succeeded could witness wonders and gain knowledge beyond what they imagined.
One evening, Eli sat by the fire, reflecting on the days since the Rite.
The settlers had grown accustomed to his guidance, but he could not share the full truth with them. How could he explain that the land itself was alive, aware, and capable of subtle judgment? How could he tell them that their presence was being observed not only by human eyes, but by forces far older than any settlement or town? Instead, he focused on keeping them safe, following the patterns he had learned from observing the land and from Aiyana's guidance. As the stars appeared in the sky, bright and unbroken by the haze of towns or smoke, Eli felt a profound sense of connection. He had glimpsed a hidden layer of the West, a world where every movement mattered, every choice had weight, and every observer was part of a delicate balance. The awakening of the Rite had changed him. He could no longer see the land as simply a place to travel or survive. It was alive, mysterious, and full of purpose. And now, he had become a part of its unfolding story. The land's test had begun, and Eli understood that the days ahead would demand all his skill, patience, and courage, not to fight against danger in the ordinary sense, but to move in harmony with forces that could not be tamed or ignored. The settlers remained unaware, their lives filled with daily chores and hopes of a new home. But Eli knew that the invisible threads connecting the land, the Rite, and himself were growing stronger. He had glimpsed the forbidden knowledge, and with it came responsibility, understanding, and the quiet power of awareness. By the time the sun rose again over the plains, Eli felt the first true stirrings of what Aiyana had called the land's response. The West itself had awoken, not in anger, but in cautious observation. And as he watched the mist rise from the streams and the shadows stretch across the hills, he understood that the story was far from over. The awakening had begun, and with it came both challenge and wonder, mystery and insight, all waiting for those willing to see, listen, and move with respect. The days grew longer, and the tension in the land became more noticeable. Eli had come to understand that the awakening of the Rite was not just a subtle shift in nature. It was a force that watched everything, testing the actions of both settlers and the tribe. He had seen the signs: streams behaving unpredictably, animals moving in unusual patterns, and small but strange occurrences near the camp. It was as if the land itself was sending messages, each one a reminder that balance must be maintained. Eli felt a quiet urgency that he could not ignore. He knew that he had to act before the subtle disturbances grew into something far more serious. Aiyana appeared one morning at the edge of the forest, as silent and graceful as ever. She carried a small bundle of herbs and a few carefully carved stones. Her expression was calm, but her eyes betrayed a seriousness that Eli had learned to trust. "The land is restless," she said softly. "It watches and remembers. You have seen the Rite, and now its effects spread. We must restore balance before the settlers, or even the forest itself, is affected in ways that could be harmful." Eli nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had guided settlers for years through forests, mountains, and plains, but never had he faced a challenge that required more than skill with a map or knowledge of wildlife. This was different. This was a test of understanding, respect, and harmony. "What must we do?" he asked, his voice quiet but determined. Aiyana gestured for him to follow. They walked together through the dense forest, moving carefully along paths Eli had never noticed before. The trees seemed taller here, their branches intertwined as if forming a protective canopy. Light filtered through the leaves, casting patterns on the ground that shifted as they moved. Every step felt deliberate, as if the forest itself guided them toward a destination only it knew. They reached a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, larger and older than any Ellie had seen. In the center lay a small mound, covered with moss and faint carvings similar to those he had witnessed during the rite. Aiyana knelt beside it, arranging her stones and herbs in a careful pattern. "This mound marks a place of strong energy," she explained. "It connects the land, the people, and the hidden forces that protect this territory. If we are to restore balance, we must honor it and ask for guidance." Eli knelt beside her, watching carefully. He did not fully understand every gesture or chant, but he felt the importance of precision, respect, and patience. The land itself seemed to respond, the air growing warmer, the wind softening, and the subtle vibrations beneath his feet becoming steadier. He realized that the task was not only about performing a ritual, but about attuning himself to the rhythms of the world around him. As they worked, small signs appeared to confirm their efforts. A bird landed nearby, watching them with bright, intelligent eyes before fluttering away. The leaves of the surrounding trees rustled gently, forming a whispering sound that almost felt like encouragement. Even the settlers, unaware of the ritual unfolding in the forest, began to move with less haste and more care, their actions seeming to mirror the calm energy that Eli and Aiyana were creating. But the balance was fragile. Later that afternoon, Eli noticed a disturbance near the edge of the settlement. A small herd of deer had wandered unusually close, their movements erratic and tense. He guided them back toward the forest, speaking softly to reassure them. He understood that these were not ordinary animals, but part of the subtle response of the land to the disturbances caused by the awakening of the Rite. Every action he took required thoughtfulness, and he felt a growing sense of responsibility. As night fell, Aiyana led him to a higher ridge overlooking the camp and the surrounding forest. The stars shone brightly in the clear sky, and the moon cast a gentle silver glow over the plains. "The land has tested you," she said, "and it will continue to test you until the balance is restored. You have done well, but the final step is not yet complete." Ellie listened intently. He had learned to trust her knowledge and her connection to the land. "What is the final step?" he asked, ready to do whatever was necessary. Aiyana pointed to a series of stones arranged in a circular pattern nearby. "We must connect the energy of the land to the Rite itself. The settlers must understand respect, even without knowing the full truth. Their awareness of the land's rhythms, even subconsciously, helps maintain the balance. We cannot force it, only guide it." They worked together through the night, arranging the stones, chanting softly, and placing herbs in patterns that mirrored the carvings on the mound. Eli felt a deep connection to the land as he moved, understanding more and more the subtle language of nature. The wind shifted, carrying faint whispers, and the vibrations beneath his feet grew steadier, almost like a heartbeat. It was as if the land itself was acknowledging their efforts, granting them a measure of trust and understanding. By morning, the first light revealed a noticeable calm in the forest and around the camp. The disturbances had lessened, the animals moved with more natural patterns, the streams flowed gently once more, and the settlers unknowingly adjusted their movements to align with the restored energy. Eli realized that their work had succeeded, at least for now. The land had accepted their efforts and offered a temporary restoration of balance. But Aiyana's gaze was serious, reminding him that this was not permanent. "The land will continue to respond to human actions," she said. "The awakening has shown its presence. It will watch, test, and respond. The balance is delicate, and every choice matters." Eli nodded, understanding that his role had changed. He was no longer just a guide for settlers. He was a bridge between worlds, a caretaker of harmony between humans and the hidden forces of the West. The weight of responsibility settled upon him, but he did not feel fear. Instead, he felt purpose, clarity, and a growing respect for the wisdom of Aiyana and her people. In the following days, Eli continued to guide the settlers, helping them build their homes, tend to their animals, and prepare for life in the territory. But he did so with an awareness of the land's subtle responses. He taught himself to notice patterns in the wind, changes in animal behavior, and signs in the earth that indicated energy and intention. Every action he took was measured and deliberate, ensuring that he maintained harmony with the awakened force of the land.
Aiyana remained a quiet guiding presence.
She did not interfere with the settlers directly but offered guidance to Eli whenever he sought it. She taught him that true balance came not from control but from respect, patience, and understanding. The two of them moved in harmony with the land, slowly restoring its stability while keeping the settlers safe and unaware of the invisible forces at work. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, Eli and Aiyana stood together at the edge of the forest, watching the camp below. The settlers were busy with evening chores, moving with an energy that seemed lighter, calmer. The wind carried the soft scent of wildflowers and grass, and the streams reflected the warm glow of the sunset. Eli felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that their efforts had brought temporary peace to a restless land. Aiyana turned to him, her expression serene. "You have done well, Eli. The land has accepted your guidance, and balance has returned for now. But remember, this is only the beginning. The West is full of stories, mysteries, and hidden forces. You have glimpsed one of them, and it will continue to watch and test those who walk its paths." Eli nodded, understanding that his journey was far from over. He had faced a challenge unlike any he had encountered before, learning not only about the land but about patience, respect, and the unseen connections that held the West together. The awakening of the Rite had changed everything, revealing a world that was alive, intelligent, and full of purpose, and now he had become a part of it. As the stars appeared in the sky, Eli felt a quiet determination. He would continue to guide the settlers, protect the land, and learn from Aiyana and her people. The West was alive, full of mysteries, and he had been given a rare opportunity to witness and honor one of its most sacred secrets. The balance had been restored, at least for now, but he knew that vigilance, respect, and understanding would be needed every day. The land stretched endlessly before him, a living story that had been awakened by the Rite and observed by Eli. The challenges ahead were unknown, but he felt ready, strengthened by the knowledge that he was part of something greater than himself. With Aiyana by his side and the wisdom of the land guiding him, he understood that the West was not a place to conquer, but a story to witness, honor, and live within. And so, as the moon rose high above the forest and plains, Eli Thorne embraced his new role, ready to continue the delicate work of guiding the settlers, protecting the land, and honoring the forces awakened by the forbidden Rite. The West had shown him its secret, and he would carry it with him, mindful, respectful, and ever watchful, as the story of the land unfolded around him. The days passed with a gentle rhythm, and the land around the settlers' camp seemed calmer than before. Streams flowed steadily, animals returned to their usual paths, and the wind whispered softly through the trees. Eli felt a sense of quiet satisfaction as he walked among the settlers, guiding them with care, aware of the hidden balance that had been restored. Yet, he knew that the story of the forbidden rite was far from over. The West was vast, alive, and unpredictable, and the awakening he had witnessed would always leave its mark. Aiyana appeared one morning at the edge of the forest, her presence calm and reassuring. "The land has accepted your guidance," she said softly. "For now, the balance is maintained." But the story continues. You and the settlers are part of it, whether you realize it or not. Every choice, every step, every action affects the harmony here. Remember that. Eli nodded. He had learned to understand the land's subtle language, the movement of animals, the flow of streams, the patterns of the wind. He had grown to see the hidden threads that connected people, the earth, and the unseen forces that protected this land. The settlers were unaware of the mysteries around them, yet their presence had been woven into the story of the West, guided by his careful watch and the wisdom of Aiyana. The morning sun painted the plains in shades of gold and green as Eli led a group of settlers to a nearby valley to explore and prepare farmland. He noticed the changes in the land. Trails that had seemed confusing before now appeared logical. Paths that had seemed obstructed were clear, and the animals moved with predictable calm. Even the wind seemed gentler, carrying the scent of wildflowers and earth, as if the land itself had approved of the care and attention Eli and Aiyana had given. Along the way, Eli reflected on what had transpired since he first witnessed the forbidden rite. He remembered the circle of stones, the chants, the careful movements of the elders, and Aiyana's calm guidance. It had been a journey that tested his patience, his awareness, and his understanding of the world beyond human sight. He realized that the land had been testing him, and in doing so it had taught him lessons far more profound than survival. He had learned about respect, harmony, and the quiet power of observing rather than controlling. The settlers, unaware of the deeper forces at work, carried on with their chores and plans. They laughed as they worked, shared stories around small fires, and marveled at the beauty of the plains. Eli smiled quietly, knowing that their lives were now safer and more aligned with the rhythms of the land, even if they did not know why. He had become a bridge between two worlds, the ordinary life of the settlers and the hidden, living story of the West. One afternoon, a young boy from the camp approached Eli with a small bundle of flowers he had picked from the valley. "Look!" the boy said proudly. "Aiyana showed me how to find the special flowers." Eli nodded, recognizing the subtle influence of Aiyana's teaching. Even without direct instruction, her presence and guidance had reached the settlers, helping them move in harmony with the land. He felt a quiet pride, knowing that the balance they had worked to restore was extending beyond immediate awareness, shaping the way the settlers interacted with their surroundings. Eli and Aiyana spent the next days ensuring that the energy of the land remained steady. They moved quietly through the forest, checking the stones, herbs, and natural markers that had been arranged during the restoration. Eli noticed that patterns in animal movement, cloud formations, and even the flow of streams had settled into a gentle, balanced rhythm. The land seemed to breathe with a steady calm, as if acknowledging their efforts and rewarding their care. Despite the calm, Eli knew that vigilance was still necessary. The West was alive with history and mystery, and even small disruptions could ripple into unexpected consequences. He continued to observe the settlers, gently guiding them when necessary, teaching them without revealing the full story, and ensuring that their actions respected the land's subtle intelligence. Aiyana remained by his side, offering wisdom and encouragement, her presence a steady anchor in the ever-changing rhythm of the territory. One evening, as the sun dipped behind distant hills, Eli and Aiyana stood together at the edge of the forest, looking out over the settlement. The settlers moved about their evening chores, their laughter carried by the wind, their lives blending seamlessly with the natural world around them. Eli felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the balance they had restored allowed the settlers to thrive while maintaining harmony with the land. Aiyana spoke softly, her voice blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of the stream.
You have done well, Eli.
The land recognizes your efforts, and it will continue to respond to those who walk with respect. But remember, the West is full of stories and mysteries. This is only one chapter. Others will come, and the balance will always need attention. Eli nodded. He understood now that being a guide was not merely about leading people safely through the wilderness. It was about listening, observing, and honoring the hidden rhythms of the land. He had become more than a scout. He had become a custodian of harmony, a bridge between human ambition and the wisdom of nature. As night fell, the camp quieted, and the settlers gathered around small fires to share stories and rest. Eli walked through the settlement, observing their peaceful slumber and the gentle glow of lanterns. The land itself seemed calm, as if approving of the care and attention given to it. The subtle vibrations beneath his feet, once restless and uncertain, were now steady and serene, like a heartbeat in tune with the world. Eli thought of the forbidden rite, of the elders, and of Aiyana's calm guidance. He realized that witnessing the ceremony had not only awakened the land's awareness, but had also awakened something within him. He had learned patience, humility, and the power of careful observation. He had learned that every action, no matter how small, could influence the balance of a living, breathing world. In the following weeks, Eli continued to guide the settlers, helping them plant crops, build homes, and navigate the plains. Each day he observed the land's responses, noting subtle signs and patterns that revealed the continued harmony. He felt a quiet joy in knowing that the settlers were thriving, even if they did not understand the deeper forces at work. The land had accepted their presence, guided by Eli and Aiyana, and the subtle energies of the West flowed steadily once more. Aiyana remained a quiet, reassuring presence, her knowledge and wisdom shaping Eli's understanding of the hidden world. Together they moved through the forests, hills, and valleys, maintaining the balance they had restored, and teaching Eli the delicate art of listening to the land. He realized that this was a journey that would continue for the rest of his life, a story without end, full of discovery, respect, and the quiet power of the natural world. As the settlers' camp grew and prospered, Eli felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had known. The West, once wild and unpredictable, had revealed its hidden rhythm, and he had learned to walk in step with it. The forbidden rite had been witnessed, its effects had been guided, and the land had returned to harmony. Yet he knew that the mystery of the West would never be fully understood, and that was part of its beauty. One morning, as the first light of dawn painted the plains in gold and green, Eli and Aiyana stood together at the edge of the forest. They watched the settlers move about their chores, the animals grazing peacefully, and the streams flowing steadily. Eli felt a deep connection to the land, to the people, and to the hidden forces that protected this territory. He knew that the story of the West was ongoing, full of challenges, mysteries, and wonder. Aiyana turned to him with a gentle smile. "You have done well, Eli. The land has accepted your guidance, and the balance is restored for now. Remember this: respect, patience, and understanding are the keys to living in harmony. The West has many secrets, and those who listen carefully will find their way." Eli nodded, feeling a profound sense of purpose. He had witnessed the forbidden rite, guided the settlers, and restored balance to the land. He had become part of a story far larger than himself, a story that would continue long after his presence. The West had revealed its secrets, and he had learned to honor them. As the sun rose higher, casting warm light over the plains, Eli felt a sense of calm and determination. He would continue to guide, to protect, and to learn from the land. The settlers would thrive, the balance would be maintained, and the mysteries of the West would continue to unfold, waiting for those with the patience, respect, and courage to observe and understand. And so, with Aiyana by his side and the vast plains stretching endlessly before them, Eli Thorne embraced his role as guide, custodian, and observer of the living, breathing West. The story of the forbidden rite had come full circle, revealing the quiet power of respect and harmony, and leaving the land, the settlers, and Eli himself forever changed. The West remained alive, full of mystery, beauty, and stories yet to be told. And Eli knew, as he watched the sunrise paint the horizon in gold, that he had glimpsed one of its deepest secrets, and carried it forward with care, wisdom, and awe.